Do you have automatic thoughts that happen to be negative? What about triggers? Triggers are thoughts that you have, that you see, you can smell, and other things. That's what we're going to be talking about in this video. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and according to realdepressionproject.com, 1 in 4 people suffer from a mental illness, and that encompasses several different things from anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, several different personality disorders, and other things, some mood disorders and things like that. So you'll come in contact with people that you have in your family, or you yourself may have something that you have not yet been diagnosed with. So that doesn't mean anything that's negative, not something is wrong with you necessarily that can't be helped. So these are just challenges that you face. So what we'll be talking about today are negative thoughts that come to you automatically after a while. So automatic negative thoughts is another way to describe it. Even there's an acronym that you can go by: automatic negative thoughts, A.N.T.S. So you can look at that as it's kind of a concept that comes from cognitive behavioral therapy. So CBT, that's a different type of therapeutic approach that some therapists use. So furthermore, we could describe it as the idea that even though this is like a minor thought, it can be also described as a major thought. So they automatically appear in our consciousness, that's influenced in our mood and psychological conditions. The 9 types of automatic negative thoughts can be described as always, never thinking, no one, everyone, every time, everything. Focusing on the negative, seeing only the bad. So that's one way. Fortune telling, predicting the worst outcome. Mind reading, so thinking you're the only one that you can know what somebody else is thinking, and so that's kind of that predictive value. Thinking with your feelings, so that's believing negative feelings without question. Guilt beating, should, must, ought to, have to. There's also labeling, attaching negative labels to yourselves or others. So that's a very detrimental way to do it. Also, they're all detrimental, but that's one way that's kind of, it's not profiling, but it's labeling. Personalizing, thinking others' behaviors have something to do with you. So this is a very exhaustive way to feel. And it can become problematic because it's also patternistic. You get into this way of thinking, and then it's a pattern that you think, and then it becomes automatic. That's your pattern, that's your way of life. You don't question it, and then it takes somebody else kind of pointing that out before you can kind of figure out, oh, I do that. Another way is blaming, so that's fault finding and not taking responsibility for yourself. Other ways that we do with the way that we think and feel are when we get triggered. So triggers come in different forms in our everyday life, but they're also brought on by different things. A lot of times triggers are things that we have, like people will be triggered when they have addictions, and addictions come in different forms also, but cues that have been associated with the original trauma is somewhat of a definition for triggers. So triggers can engage some or all of our senses. So that can be defined as our smell, sight, sound, taste, and touch. So if you have something that smells very similar to something that has once been brought on by a particular experience in your past, then that's going to bring you back to that particular situation, and then therefore it's going to give you that thought, that feeling, that emotion, and then you can almost be in that situation in your mind and not even, you can realize it, of course you're going to realize it, but it can almost put you back there in that moment. So these are different experiences that you can have, and it's very real. So then that brings you to the question of what triggered me. So these are according to the Gottman Institute. So these are some of the thoughts that you might have. I felt excluded. So when you feel excluded, so these are different ways that you may feel, which go on to say, I felt powerless. I felt unheard. I felt scolded. I felt judged. I felt blamed, disrespected. I felt a lack of affection, uncared for, lonely, ignored. I felt like I couldn't be honest. So a lot of these are geared towards relationships, and of course our everyday interactions with others usually are with people. I felt like the bad guy. Felt forgotten, unsafe, unloved. I felt like that was unfair. I felt frustrated, disconnected, trapped. I felt like I had a lack of passion. I felt like I couldn't speak. I felt manipulated, or I felt controlled. So if you feel like that, then those likely were triggered by something, one of those ways that we talked about. So those initiating factors, those catalysts, that startup, smell, sight, sound, taste, or touch. So because without those ways, you would not be able to have had those other thoughts or emotions. So those are very different humanistic ways to feel that are brought on by those triggers. And so the behavior follows up. So that's where the cognitive behavioral part comes into play. How you think and feel is going to affect how you behave. So when you think about the automatic negative thoughts, all of it plays together because you have the trigger and the thought. So these are different ways to look at things, and most of us can kind of apply this to our life. And when you do that, a lot of times it becomes very apparent and how it affects us. And a lot of times it's negative. We all almost always have a negative approach to things, and we ideally would like to change the automatic negative thoughts to an automatic positive thought. That's almost rare that we do that, but if it were to where we could solve a lot of our problems. And of course, with this being Mental Health Awareness Month, there's a plethora of different ways that we can approach all the mental health problems. And it's because it's not just, it's just the way we think. Most people think that Mental Health Awareness Month is about anxiety and depression. And then there's another approach that people have that, it's severe mental health. So individuals who have or experience life with mental health disorders such as schizophrenia, which is a more severe diagnosis, bipolar, which is considered a more severe diagnosis. So it's all encompassing. It's just some are treatable versus not curable, but you just take medication for it and deal with the symptoms, versus things like depression, which are curable. So they're more of a temporary fix. If you have thoughts on this, I would be more than happy to talk about this with you, or reply to your comment on the page. So thank you for listening.